flow. Blessed be your name. Blessed be your name. When I'm found in the desert place, though I walk through the wilderness, blessed be your name. Every blessing you pour out, I'll turn back to praise. When the darkness closes in, Lord, still I will say, blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your name. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your glorious name. Blessed be your name. When the sun's shining down on me, when the world's all as it should be, blessed be your name. Blessed be your name. On the road marked with suffering, though there's pain in the offering, blessed be your name. Yes, Lord. Every blessing you pour out, I'll turn back to praise. When the darkness closes in, Lord, still I will say, blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your name. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your glorious name. Oh, blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your name. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your glorious name. You give and take away. You give and take away. My heart will choose to say, Lord, blessed be your name. God, you give and take away. Oh, you give and take away. My heart will choose to say, Lord, blessed be your name. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be the name. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your glorious name. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your name. I choose to say, blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your glorious name. Blessed be your name.
And Joseph said to his brothers, "Come close to me." When they had done so, he said, "I am your brother Joseph, the one you sold into Egypt. And now do not be distressed, and do not be angry with yourselves for selling me here, because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you. For 2 years now there has been a famine in the land, and for the next 5 years there will be no ploughing and reaping. But God sent me ahead of you to preserve for you a remnant on earth, and to save your lives by a great deliverance." If you take time to reflect and look back on life, it won't take you very long probably to recognise that in your life there's some things that you'd have never have predicted or seen coming. If you're anything like me, there's been plot twists in my story that have just left me stunned, if I'm honest. And there have been seasons in my life that you couldn't pay me enough money to go through or relive again. But in a weird way, at the same time, I wouldn't trade them for anything. Because the highs and the lows have brought me to this point today. It's the mountains and the valleys that make me who I am. So before we get to this part of Joseph's story, I want us all to be holding on to and engaging with a question. What season of life are you in? Because being able to name it can be really helpful. Being able to recognise the kind of season that we are in can be useful for us to grow and to transform. Some of you watching this video right now are in a really good season of your life, where life just seems to be working, everything seems to be clicking into place, everything's working well. For others of you, maybe you're in a hard season, where life isn't working out well, where nothing seems to be falling into place. For lots of us today, it might be a season that you'd call lonely, where there's this longing for deeper relationships that always feel like they're happening to other people, out there somewhere else. Some of you might name the season that you're in right now as transition. Maybe as we're on lockdown and trying our best with our kids, maybe your season right now is one of exhaustion. Some of you might find yourselves in a season of wilderness. Some of you are in a season of new discovery, where you feel like you're coming alive again in ways that you would have never expected before. This current situation that the whole world seems to find itself in at the moment is forcing us all to slow down. And that's what Lent is all about. Slowing down. What's mind-blowing to me is that all of these seasons that I've just mentioned, and lots more that have gone unmentioned, are all present right here, right now. At the same time as I'm speaking these words into this phone. We are all in a season of life. So today, what season are you in? See, a season of life is usually marked out by a particular event. So something happens and it marks you. It changes you. You carry that with you throughout your days. It's there with you when you open your eyes and wake up. It's there with you when you eat your breakfast. It's there with you when you take a shower. It's there with you when you drive to work or not. It's there with you when you go to the gym or do a body coach workout in your living room. It's there with you when you pick up the kids. It's there with you when you close your eyes to sleep. It's like a kind of shadow that follows you around. It's an event or an happening that somehow leaves this residue on you for a period of time. It could be starting a new school or a new job or a new avenue of your life. Or it could be redundancy or job loss or a furlough or a divorce or a diagnosis from the doctor, where that residue just sorts to stick to you. It's like a mood that follows you around. Maybe the mood comes from the pregnancy or a newborn or even the inability to become pregnant. Or maybe it's turning 40 or 50 or 60. Maybe your mood started when you became an empty nester and you're trying to figure out what next. Maybe the season for you is retirement. This isn't just for a couple of weeks. Sometimes these seasons can last months, even years, even decades. As I've been really thinking about this idea of seasons and the differences between them, I've realised this thing. There are some seasons where God wants to do something for you, a breakthrough or a healing or a transformation. But there are also some seasons where God wants to do something through you, to influence or impact someone or something else, your ministry. And then there are seasons when God wants to do something in you. That usually happens in all of the hard and the difficult and the dark stuff. We saw that last time with Jonah. If we can't name the seasons that we're in, we feel stuck or trapped in that moment. And it makes it hard to worship, makes it hard to pray, makes it hard to come to church, makes it hard to interact with other people. You see, so much of our lives and our effort and our energy is used up trying to get out of things that are hard. And I say that from experience. Sometimes it's actually about remaining in the rubbish and not trying to run from it that can open us up to receive what God has for us. See, life doesn't happen in a straight line. And Joseph's story shows us this brilliantly. So Joseph is given this big promise. Where? At the beginning of his story. At 17 years of age, he is given a lifelong calling. First, his older brothers, all 10 of them, will serve under him. This was massive. Culturally, this would have never happened and would have been very insulting to them and to the rest of the family. Then he says that the entire cosmos itself will pay honour and respect to him. Wow. Just imagine as a 17-year-old lad thinking that the entire universe revolves around him. But this was offensive. It was almost blasphemous in this day and in this culture. But my point isn't about how the calling started. It's how it actually worked out. Because life isn't linear. So Joseph gets this call or this promise. But then a lot of his life looks like that's not the case. A lot of his life looks like that promise was meant for someone else. It looks like the opposite, in fact, is true. His life, as you follow his story through, as you follow this origin story through, looks like betrayal and being sold into slavery and forced to leave home and lied about and falsely accused and imprisoned and on death row. It's a mess. Maybe that's how your life feels today. I know my life can feel like a big old mess sometimes. So you get this call or this conviction about something deep down in your life, but now that promise feels anything but. The season that you're in is hard. Maybe you've had a call in your life, but now it feels doubtful that it's ever even going to happen. Genesis 37, starting in verse 1, says this: Jacob lived in the land where his father had stayed, the land of Canaan. This is the account of Jacob's family line. Joseph, a young man of 17, was tending the flocks with his brothers, the sons of Bilhah and the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives, and he brought their father a bad report about them. Now Israel loved Joseph more than any of his other sons, because he had been born to him in his old age, and he made an ornate robe for him. When his brothers saw that their father loved him more than any of them, they hated him and could not speak a kind word to him. Now again, as like we've been seeing with lots of the origin stories in this series, this is a dysfunctional family. There's nothing normal about this. Or maybe this is normal, seeing as though it keeps on happening. It seems like this big old crazy mess already. So Joseph is 17 years old, good looking guy, but he knows it. He's cocky, he's a big head, and it drives his other brothers crazy. And he takes this self-righteous kind of bad report about them back to his dad. So he's a grass, he's a snitch, and he's actually his dad's favourite. Every time he puts that coat on, he is physically embodying, he is physically wearing his privilege. It's a visual reminder to his brothers that he's the favourite, that he's the special chosen one. So I toyed with the idea of just sitting here and quite comfortably and easily reading you the next 3 chapters of Genesis. But instead I want to encourage you to go, maybe even pause this video if you want to, and go and watch the Bible Project's YouTube video on this particular part of the Genesis story. You see, there's a lot going on in this origin story, but there's this one line that is so easy to miss, and it's when that Joseph finds himself in prison, and he's trapped, and it's dark, and everything looks helpless and hopeless. This is most definitely one of these valley seasons in his life. And the storyteller just kind of drops this little detail in, just this one little liner. It just says this: and he was in prison for 2 years. No big deal. And then we move on to the next bit of action in the story. But you need to stop there and say, what? 2 years? That's 700 days of asking, what? What's going on? Was this promise just a lie? Was this thing that I was told when I was 17 just not true? Was it meant for somebody else? Why has God abandoned me? Why am I feeling like this? What have I done wrong? Maybe you've asked those kinds of questions as well. And so Joseph has to live in the tension. He has to hold these 2 seemingly opposing things. See, on the one hand, he has this promise. And then on the other hand, there's what he's actually experiencing. And so what's the point here? What is the writer of this origin story trying to get across? Why are we even thinking and talking about this today? Well, all of you have a promise over your lives. God has spoken words over you and over your life. The creator of the entire universe has promised and called you out of something and into something else. Joseph's promise was made pretty much at the start of his life. But by the time the turbulence and the setbacks and the knockdowns are actually living his life where it's happened, that's what shaped and formed him. See, he started off how? He started off proud. He started off arrogant. He started off as a snitch. He started off as his dad's favourite. He probably thought he knew exactly how life was going to go. He was going to live on easy street for the rest of his life. But then look at all of the bumps in the road. Look at all of the left turns that his story takes. And all of those are to transform him into the kind of person who could take that initial promise that he was given at 17 and use it to help others. See, if Joseph had just continued along that same path as that arrogant, proud, favourite 17-year-old lad, if he had just continued that same way, who's the only person that would have benefited from the promise that God had given to him and spoken over his life? Joseph. But instead, because of the seasons that he has to go through, something about Joseph is changed and formed, and it meant that who benefited from that promise by the end of this story? Well, Pharaoh and Potiphar and the butler in prison and the entire nation of Egypt and his mom and his dad and his brothers and the nation of Israel and ultimately the whole world. That's the meaning of Joseph's story. That's the reason for the seasons in our lives as well today. And this is what's going on in how Joseph extends and ends this part of his story. See, he has to choose what he's going to say here. He's given this dilemma, this choice. He has to choose to see his life and the seasons that he's been through in a particular way. So we get towards the end of Joseph's story. After all of his brothers are all worried that now that somehow the shoe is on the other foot, now it's Joseph with the power, He's going to kill them. He's going to give them what they deserve. He's going to exact revenge upon them for what they've done to him and the things that they have caused his life to go through. But instead, Joseph says this: don't be afraid. I am in a place. Am I in the place of God? You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. Don't be afraid. I will provide for you and your children. Can you see the choice that he has made here? How he's choosing to steward this promise that was given to him all those years ago, and he's using it to bless and to provide for others. Joseph has made an internal choice. He could have said, you know what? Stuff you lot. You deserve this. After all that you've done to me, after all that you've put me through, I'm done. You're dead to me. Get out. And he'd have been justified in doing that. But that's not what he does here. It's probably what the 17-year-old Joseph would have done, but not what the 30-ish Joseph would have done. He's not walking around pointing at his privilege anymore. He's not pointing at all the ways that he has and how other people don't. No. Over the years and through these seasons of his life, he has been transformed. And now he takes what he has and he uses it to provide for others. The hungry, the poor, the marginalised, his enemies. He's choosing to wield his position and his power and his authority for the well-being of others. He's carrying on that blessing, and he's carrying on that promise that was given to Abraham, that he will be blessed to be a blessing. And the hard truth that we get from Joseph's story is this: maturity is almost always forged through trial. I'll say that again because it's important to hear, because we don't want to hear it. It's this: maturity, particularly spiritual maturity, is always forged through trial. I don't know about you, but I've spent so much time desperately trying to get out of trials. Desperately trying, instead of learning from within them, but to escape them, to run away like Jonah. But that's not what we want, is it? No. We want the path of least resistance. We want the easy way. We want the nice straight line to our promise. We want no bumps in our road, no diversions, no unexpected seasons. But God wants us to choose, just like God wanted Joseph to choose. To choose to cooperate with God where we are right now. Not where we'd like to be. Not where we think we're going to be in 5 years' time. Not how we think we're going to behave after this COVID-19 stuff's all done and dusted. God wants us to cooperate with him where we are right now and who we are right now. So today I want to encourage you. If you feel like you're in one of those hard seasons today, you can choose to be the victim and live in this kind of bitter, reactionary, or even switched off way towards God and towards others. Or, and here's the choice, you can choose to transform your pain and become a blessing for the world. Like Joseph, you have a choice. We all have a choice. A choice of how to view our lives. We get to name the seasons that we are in. So today, how will you choose?
My hope is built on nothing less than Jesus' blood and righteousness. I dare not trust the sweetest frame, but wholly trust righteousness alone. Faultless stand before the throne.